Okay, all my stock bros. You don't really have to be like a genius to understand that red graph mean not good, and this is Intel's graph. The company, or what it's valued at to the stock market, is 16% lower over the course of 5 years. And you might want to argue it's like, oh, COVID happened and COVID had a big effect on the stock and stuff like that. When you look at other companies like AMD, it is up 625% over the course of the past 5 years. So yeah, they had a dip during COVID too. It did not affect them that much because they're doing really well now. If you look at Nvidia as well, again, they had a dip during COVID around 2022. Then obviously Nvidia has been going to the moon. We all know this. They're worth like over $1 trillion or something at this point in time. But what is affecting that downturn in value? Well, first, let's start off with probably what most people know Intel for, and that is their CPUs. And I asked you guys, hypothetically, you're buying a new CPU. What brand you buying? That most people are picking AMD over Intel. So even though Intel has been known for years and years and years for their CPUs, AMD is drawing a significant amount of people. What some people are saying is, well, they just go for the best value CPU that's out there and they don't care about brands. And honestly, this poll was nothing about brands. It was, what would you buy? The brand doesn't matter right now. It's who's making the best product. And right now it's AMD. But why are people choosing to buy AMD over Intel CPUs? He's talking about the Ryzen 7 7800X3D and Intel's i9 14900K.
What are some of the drawbacks of the 7800X3D as a gaming CPU, especially relative to the 14900K? Well, look, I'll admit, I sat back at my desk trying to come up with one real drawback, and nothing really came to mind. Basically, I outsourced this to you guys because I didn't want to just say the 7800X3D is flawless. It works really well, just buy it. And boy, did I get a lot of feedback. Most of it though was people just telling me they couldn't really come up with something, which, come on guys, that doesn't really help me. I'm trying to think of a disadvantage to the 7800X3D.
It's a really good CPU. It's really good value. It's fast, pretty reliable and power efficient. I don't see many downsides either, especially for gaming. And like, I just finished building my new PC this week and was first planning on using Intel, but I changed my mind and went with the 7800X3D.
Of course, I'm not trying to say that the 7800X3D is perfect. As I noted earlier, if you're also tackling core heavy workloads, then the Core i9 14900K will destroy it.
And what he's saying there is that Intel's CPU is very fast if you're doing anything other than gaming too, but it also draws an absolutely stupid amount of power. Like right here, we can see that the 14900K is down at 550 watts. This is total system power compared to AMD's 7800X3D is at 425 watts while playing a game. Probably Intel's best CPU is the i7 14700K. When you look at the power efficiency, the 14700K is not very power efficient. You can see it's using a lot of power down here at the bottom. And if you compare it to AMD's CPUs, the 7900X, the 7950X, or whatever, they're a much better power efficiency, because if a CPU isn't very power efficient, then it's going to kick out more heat into your room. It's gonna be harder to cool. Like if you don't spend money on a very high-end cooler, then it could not be able to run its full potential and stuff. But during winter, definitely warm up your room, be another space heater. Here is Intel's 14700K, like we're just talking about. You can see it's about $400. Pretty expensive. There's obviously cheaper options like their i5s and their i3s. And we also look at the AMD's option here, the 7900X, $383. It's about the same price. What a lot of people are concerned about when they buy a new system, Intel releases a CPU generation. Your motherboard is good for 1 or 2 generations of Intel CPUs. And that's not that much compared to say like AMD's platform that came out in 2016 is still getting new CPUs to this day that are very good value.
The year is 2024 and we're reviewing a new AM4 CPU. We thought they were done with the 5600X3D last year, but they're not. So there's a 5700X3D we're looking at today.
That's one of the main downsides is Intel CPUs just, they don't have the longevity. If you buy a new motherboard with your new CPU, then you're gonna have to buy another motherboard if you choose to upgrade in the future. Okay, it's expensive for 1 and a hassle for 2 because you have to take apart your entire system and replace a motherboard. And honestly, a lot of people probably aren't gonna do that. We can even see this in probably a part of the market that nobody cares about. That's why I'm only gonna talk about it for a second, is the server side of things. Compared to Intel, AMD's EPYC CPUs that are on servers are also just whooping Intel's ass right now. They said here, we finished 2023 strong with sequential year-over-year revenue, blah, 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 a lot of jargon. Quarterly AMD Instinct GPU and EPYC CPU sales and higher AMD Ryzen processor sales. Demand for a high-performance data center products, that is partly their EPYC processors, portfolio continues to accelerate, which means they're taking market share away from Intel in the server side. What that's basically amounting to is like, who cares about buying Intel CPUs right now? They're typically a worse value, worse power efficiency, and you have to upgrade your motherboards all the time. Intel's a little desperate. I don't know if you guys remember this, but they did a brief thing. They took this down, but Intel did a marketing campaign or a marketing slide that are just bashing AMD CPUs because of their naming. And they called AMD CPUs snake oil because they're definitely fake, you know?
Intel has completely lost its marbles. Their newest presentation contains the unhinged rantings of a company now resembling a deranged lunatic. Intel...
It's just like, if you want to watch this entire video by Gamers Nexus, I think a lot of you guys has like 740,000 views. Absolutely goofy video that I don't know why Intel ever made a slideshow like this. It shows a lot of immaturity and desperateity. Yes, AMD does have some problems with their names. They point out some good things. It's like, oh, sometimes even though it has a 7 in front of the names, like this isn't a 7000 series CPU. This is like one from 3000 series or 4000 series, but they named it like it was one. And I agree, it's kind of a shitty way to name things. Yeah, the name sucks sometimes, but most of the time it's fine. And they're just cherry picking the bad ones to make their products look reasonably okay. And then they did this. You know the little i that's been around for forever? It's like, oh, a Core i9, i7, i5, i3. It's gone. It's not happening anymore. Why they did that, I don't know. But now they're calling their things the Core Ultra processors and the Core non-Ultra processors, and then Intel processors without Core. Name here, that's like a 14900K. They're now having something a little bit like a 150U or a 185H. I don't really know what those numbers mean yet, and this is why they said they're changing, at least from the words of LTT here.
The Core Ultra scheme is part of Intel's plan to de-emphasize what generation, or gen, a chip is a part of, as they think that future chip architectures will be a little more purpose-built than they have been.
So what Intel's trying to say is that by them making a naming scheme like this, they're not emphasizing the generation number anymore. Instead, they're emphasizing what the CPU is supposed to be good for, or what kind of level of performance it has on it. To me, I think this is really weird. What this is doing is making an excuse for them to do exactly what they criticized AMD for doing. They said that AMD CPUs are snake oil because sometimes they release one that looks like it's one generation, but it's actually an older one. Intel is doing the exact same thing by making, even though it is an older architecture, it's on a newer name to make it look like it's newer. They're doing the exact same thing AMD, or they accuse AMD of doing. I don't know, are they like projecting or something? Why are they even rebranding anyways? A lot of people know Intel for that, and it's going to be a whole restructuring process. Do they think that they've tainted the name of the Core i like naming scheme, and they want to switch to a new one to try to refresh things again? We don't really know. One of my best guesses is honestly that 14900K and the naming scheme that they have right now is probably just like getting too long. Like it has 14 gens now, that they just kind of want to reset the number. What a lot of people say is like, we realized our branding was only clear to techies, so we've decided to change it so now it's confusing to everyone. Equality. And then there's also people in the comments here that say the goal is not simplicity. The goal is to obfuscate so they can confuse people into buying older generation products, just like how I was saying here. Everyone does it and pretends like they don't. AMD does the same thing. It isn't new. And I don't know why they rebranded their stuff. It just seems overly confusing for no reason. But if they did want to reset their names because the number was getting too big, then I guess this is the way to do it. I don't know, let me know what you think. I just feel like Intel hasn't made like a good move in a while. But there is a few things, like they got some things going for them. Okay, the first thing is actually the Intel Meteor Lake CPUs. Now, these guys are going to be coming out sometime this year, but there are laptops and mobile chips that are out there that already have Meteor Lake CPUs in there. This would be technically 15th gen, but it's going to be branded under the Core Ultra or the Core series or whatever. They're getting rid of the I's for this generation. They've taken their Arc GPUs and they've just mashed it into their CPUs now to make a beefier integrated GPU onto their CPUs. But basically what that means is you don't necessarily need a GPU to play games on, say, like a laptop, or you can accelerate things that need graphics on a laptop without, you know, drawing a ton of power with a whole graphics card in there. It's giving pretty decent gaming performance, at least according to LTT. You can see in a lot of these games and stuff that it's pretty close or pretty good performer. Also, with these new beefed up integrated graphics, it allows Intel to bust into other parts of the market. Say like MSI just unveiled their MSI Claw gaming handheld, which might be interesting for a lot of people. And this one is actually powered by Intel's Meteor Lake gaming processors with their integrated graphics on them. Like on their mobile CPUs, at least at this moment in time, they actually have some like really low power cores on them. Now this might get a little geeky and stuff. These low power cores will actually take over the system when only light processes are going on. So what this could mean on a mobile laptop or something, we might be getting a lot better power efficiency on Intel chips. And that could bring them a little bit of, you know, favorability, because that's one reason why so many people have been looking to AMD for their laptops, is because they're just so much more power efficient. It also seems like the perception of these new Meteor Lake parts and how they perform is kind of mediocre.
I was hoping these would be better. Like when I got them in, I was running games, running benchmarks, and I thought this is way better than the previous generation of Intel product, but I'm not impressed. How is it that they've had years to work on this, hype this up the way that they did? Like this is like the most transformative moment for Intel's laptop industry, but it's just, they've caught up. This is just the beginning. I respect that, and there's like plenty of room for this to grow, but they've just caught up.
The other thing is Intel is moving to chiplet architecture. And they might like to call it something different, but AMD has been doing chiplet architecture all the way since Ryzen came out in 2016. Basically what this is like putting a bunch of chips from, you know, different manufacturers or different process nodes, putting them all together to make the best CPU that you possibly can, and make it basically a modular CPU instead of just trying to make the entire CPU on one freaking die, which is very expensive and honestly might not even be as superior in terms of technology. Finally, Intel is copying the chiplet architecture design from AMD, but calling it tiles. Tile-based architecture is really exciting because it allows Intel to keep up with different parts of a CPU that might be more advanced than others. Because these parts of these chips are smaller, it's more likely that they can make them for cheaper. That's one way that Ryzen with AMD has been able to make their chips so much cheaper over the years. Also, Intel has been working on something called an NPU, otherwise known as a neural processing unit. I don't think this is that exciting to a lot of you guys or even me. I don't really care about it a whole lot, but basically what neural processing units do is they accelerate AI tasks. So they're able to run AI tasks on your computer at much better power efficiency and maybe very good speeds for whatever you want to use AI for. AMD's also been making NPUs. Now beyond CPUs though, we all know that Intel has busted into the market of GPUs. Intel Arc graphics have come an extremely long way. Back at launch, they're really messy. These things constantly get driver updates. I mean, just look at this. Like this one was literally just a few days ago on February 8th, like last week. If you just go to the last driver here, you can see that there's just drivers every now and then that are just like this many improvements in these games. And another part about Intel Arc graphics cards, they've been competitive with other GPUs in the market. So say the A750. This card is decently fast, and with driver updates getting better and better, is going for $205 right now. Not bad at all. If you compare it to AMD's closest competition, the RX 6600 is $190. And the A750 and the 6600 are pretty competitive in terms of their performance. Intel, in an area of the market like where Nvidia and AMD haven't been pushing their prices all that much, Intel's actually been willing to at least bust into this, and they haven't been stingent about their prices. They've actually been very competitive. And if these Intel Arc GPUs get you at all excited, then you can maybe get excited for their new battle mage ones. Say like the arc ones, you know, second generation of a product usually fixes a lot of the, you know, low hanging fruit or the mistakes of the first product. So battle mage is Intel Arc's second generation, and this isn't that far away. It's confirmed for 2024 according to Tech Power up here. What the rumors are of this moment is that it's supposed to be in Q2. So these should be coming out by July of 2024 here. And I gotta share with you guys this. I found out what actually happens in Ohio. Intel is building a fabrication plant here. What they do is they contract with other GPU, CPU, or, you know, chip manufacturers, and they can make chips for them at these fabrication places. And you might know a company like TSMC, one of the world leaders in the chip manufacturing. They do stuff for Nvidia, AMD. I think they do stuff for Apple. I'm pretty sure they make the M series chips. Intel is expanding a lot of these fabrication plants across the country. Now let me see here. Joe Biden. They have one in New Mexico, Arizona, Oregon. The thing about this though is if they are manufacturing chips for other companies, they can honestly be secured for money or contracts with other companies for years and years into the future. What's also cool is that they're doing this in America. So they're diversifying the chip manufacturing within the world, because say like TSMC is based in Taiwan, obviously. They might be making the chips for Nvidia for their next AI based kind of stuff. Nvidia rumored to switch to Intel for advanced packaging for next gen AI GPUs away from TSMC. And the reason that Nvidia is thinking about doing this is because there's so much, everybody's using TSMC, that they're booked up all the time. Now, if Intel can actually, you know, take some of that manufacturing away from TSMC, this doesn't really apply to us, but they're probably going to be making a good amount of money making the GPUs for Nvidia with their AI-based stuff, because we all know how Nvidia is doing right now. And the last thing that Intel is probably working on, and I don't know how this really is, but it's their workstation PCs. Dell, Fujitsu, Supermicro, Lenovo, Box, HP, Puget Systems. But I really wanted to just have this conversation. Is Intel dying? Because obviously we don't want to see, at least in the CPU market, that there's only one company like AMD that's doing everything. They're only ones innovating, because we'll see stagnation. If you guys know, there's been definitely moments in Intel's history when they've been the absolute top of the CPU game that they haven't done anything for years and years and years and years, because there's been no competition. They can just sit on their ass and just let the money flow in. And right now, at this current moment, we're seeing a lot of competition, and now Intel's losing its grasp and doing things like the snake oil thing because maybe they're a little desperate right now for a little bit of marketing and market share. But obviously Intel is still successful in other areas. What do you think about Intel? Would you use Intel to build your CPUs on, or do they need to do a little bit more to offer? Or is AMD just dominating the consumer level CPU area right now? And actually AMD seems to be dominating the professional CPU area as well. So that's out of my range. I've never used it. I haven't had the urge to buy an Intel CPU since 2017 when I bought my Ryzen CPU. Even back then, when Ryzen just started, I still thought that they were a better platform, better CPUs, and something that was worth investing in. I just don't see it right now for Intel, especially since like almost every other generation, you got to upgrade your freaking motherboard. What do you think Intel should be doing to gain some market share back? That's been it for me though. Just want to talk about Intel, and hopefully you guys have a good one. I'll see you in the next video, and peace.